So, for those of you who are tracking the latest developments in the Murdaugh murders, crime, and corruption saga, you'll know that this news outlet and the Murdaugh Murders podcast published jailhouse tapes, phone calls from Alec Murdaugh to members of his family, where they discussed various matters, including financial dealings. We published these phone calls because we believe they provided insight into Alec Murdaugh, the man who was at the epicenter of this crime and corruption saga. Now, Murdaugh's attorneys disagreed. In fact, they filed a motion in federal court to try to prevent the jail, the Richland County Jail, from releasing any additional tapes. Are they correct? We don't think so. In fact, that's why we published the tapes. First Amendment scholars don't think so. And most of the lawyers we've spoken with over the course of the past week also don't think so. But Murdaugh's attorneys believe that he has been somehow denied his right to privacy, even though he is advised at the beginning of every tape that his conversations are being recorded and could be subject to release. Even though that acknowledgement was clearly made, they think his rights have been violated. And so they've gone to the judge, gone to actually now a fourth federal judge, in the hopes of blocking the release of any more of these tapes. Now, what's interesting about the judge that's hearing this case? Well, there are a couple things. First of all, as mentioned earlier, she is the fourth judge who has been tapped to hear this case in the span of less than a week. So again, this debate started last week, and we've already gotten to our fourth judge who's being asked to hear it. And the federal court system has provided absolutely nothing to explain why they're having such trouble settling on a judge to hear it. Well, that's curious, and as everyone following the Murdaugh murders case is well aware, there's not much about it that isn't suspicious. And so when you see things like this, you have to kind of pause and say, well, wait a minute, what's the deal? What's really going on behind the scenes? And again, unfortunately, we don't know because the federal court system's not talking about why it's moving these judges around. All right, so the judge they've settled on for now is Michelle Childs. And most people now know Michelle Childs' name because she was one of the top contenders for the U.S. Supreme Court nomination in Joe Biden's administration. So her Democratic credentials are very well known. She's someone who also had Republican support in her bid for the U.S. Supreme Court, including U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. Now, Childs has some connections, though, to Murdaugh, to his attorneys. One of those connections is the fact that the PR firm, which was campaigning for her Supreme Court nomination, just happens to be the same firm that has been representing Alec Murdaugh in the aftermath of all these scandals. So would she be a little more favorably inclined to hear arguments from them? Well, they've been crafting her arguments, so it would seem to me that that could be a conflict. Also, you've got the fact that she works, or rather used to work, for the law firm that owns this public relations firm. So you've not only got the conflict of they were working for her Supreme Court bid, they're working for Alec Murdaugh and his associates, but it's also the firm where Childs used to work. Again, does this mean she's going to be unable to impartially render judgment on this jailhouse tapes case? I don't know. I'm not necessarily saying that. What I am saying, though, is that given all of the judicial corruption that we've seen in this state, all of the questions that have been raised about judges in proximity to the Murdaugh crime and corruption saga, we just can't have any margin for error here. We can't have the public have any hint that things aren't on the up and up. This case is too high profile, it's too important, there's too much money, too many victims, too many dead people. Again, we've got to get it right. We've got to get it right. And even ancillary cases like the question of whether or not more jailhouse tapes should be released or not need to be handled with the maximum attention to ethics, to transparency, to fairness, and any kind of conflict of interest just can't be tolerated. So I would argue that as painful as it might be for the federal bench in South Carolina, you might want to get a fifth judge ready because I don't think Michelle Childs should hear this case. And frankly, I think she should have known better than to accept it. This is a case where she's got some clear conflicts of interest, as our executive editor Liz Farrell pointed out in her piece yesterday on FITSNews. So keep an eye on that case. We sure will, because this is an important transparency issue as the Murdaugh murders, crime, and corruption saga rolls on.